Hello! The pistons came in, so I'm gonna get this thing loaded up in my truck and get it over to the machine shop so they can bore out the cylinders. The way I'm gonna be lifting it today, I'm gonna be using the chain. And I have a couple of the old head bolts. If you have the chain real tight on here, you don't have to worry about the head bolts bending at all. So I'm gonna put it in here like this. Really long threads here. And it doesn't need to be tightened down with a tool at all. It doesn't have to be super tight, it just has to hold. And right about there, that's how much slack you want in it. You don't need a lot, just enough to get a hook underneath it with the engine hoist. Alright, looks like that's down far enough, so I'm gonna go get the engine hoist, lift this thing up, and put it in my truck. So now that we have the engine hoist set up, I'm going to show you a little trick. Usually when lifting an engine, you can just use this and it slowly goes up. But nobody has the patience to do this, or at least I don't. So there's no weight on this at all. You can take the front of this thing and just lift up on it. Basically, it's going to fill up with fluid inside this cylinder, and eventually it will, as you can see, it's already up, no pumping involved. You can even put weight on it just to test it out, and this is high enough for us to get this engine on. So I'm going to roll the engine over to the engine hoist. Really need to grease those wheels, very squeaky. And come over to this little valve here to let the engine hoist down. Alright, right there's good. So I'm going to put the chain on the hook and try to get it lined up so it's center. We don't want this thing tilting on us. We're going to start lifting it. If it looks off, you can move the hook just so it lifts it straight. But it looks pretty good right now. And basically lift up the entire thing, the stand and everything. And right where this is, we can just slip this right off of here. And I have one last bolt in here. It's a different size than the others. I used what I had. So this last bolt here, you want to hold on to this, otherwise this thing will fall down on you. And there it is. So now that I have the mount off, I'm going to clean up this surface right here with this. This is the same thing I used to clean up the gasket on the other side up here. So I'm just going to get that done real quick. And I was using this the other day and it's super small, so I'm just going to grab a new disc. The way these things work, this thing, you just grab onto it, screw it right out, and then you grab yourself a new disc and then keep going. So now that I have a new disc, it's not all worn down, I'm going to keep going. Well, I wheeled this over to my truck. All the gasket surfaces are prepared, and I had to bring a piston with me to the machine shop. So I'm just going to lift this up, set it on this tire here because I don't want to have any damage underneath. Alright, now I'm going to set it down. Now I'm going to get the chain out of it. And that sun sure is bright. But man, it's a nice day. Not a cloud in the sky. Alright, chain off. I'm just going to slide this back, get it in the truck, and send it off to the machine shop. And once I get back, we can go through more. So I'm back from the machine shop. Dropped it off, and they're going to be boring and honing the cylinders. Should take them about a week. In the meantime, I'm going to prepare a couple different things. The things I'd like to go through are the new pistons and the different rings that are involved, and basically explaining the piston overall, like the different sections of it. The second thing is the connecting rods, how they interact with the piston and the crank, and different things about them. I also have a crankshaft from a 542 valve that I'm going to use for this application. The stroke is exactly the same as a 543 valve, so I can use it. I'm going to measure the different journals and figure out if I need to get oversized bearings or if I can use standard. Once I figure that out, then I'll actually order bearings. And I'll probably go through the old oil pump. This engine did have aluminum shavings running through it, so it was basically acting like sandpaper. I can show you how exactly the oil pump works and what oil shavings will do when it's inside your engine. It's going to look pretty gnarly in there, so should be interesting. Hang tight and I'll get through everything, and hopefully you enjoy. So here's the box of new pistons. There is one missing because I did have to take it to the machine shop, but this is the way pistons are shipped. You have your pistons here, as you can see, and then all your different rings, and also the retainers for your wrist pins. Take this out real quick. So this is what a brand new piston looks like. You have your crown of the piston, that's what this is called, and your different rings. The first two on this piston are a certain diameter. They are your compression rings, and they're going to be a little bit different than the oil rings. Compression rings are usually thicker, and the gaps, when you do set it up, you want it at the front and the back of the piston This top one goes to the front, bottom goes to the back. Basically, you don't want them lined up because you will lose compression if they are right next to each other. That's why you want them separated. This little number right here means that it is an oversized piston. These are 20 over pistons. And this little dot right here means that that is the front. This part is going to face the front of the engine. This third ring here is basically 3 different rings together. It's your oil control rings. There's going to be, I don't know if you can see this, but you see that little zigzag one right there? That will go in between 2 smaller ones on the side of it. They're basically oil scrapers for inside the cylinder. They'll scrape the excess oil off, and because of this zigzag one, it will have a little bit of oil in there to allow it to lubricate the piston. If there's too much, there's holes right here on both sides, and that will drain back down into the oil pan. These parts right here, these are your skirts of the piston. This is what actually keeps the piston aligned in the cylinder and keeps it from rocking back and forth. So, and there's a coating right here which will allow that to lubricate. It's kind of like a Teflon, if you will. So it won't score up the cylinders too much. This hole right here is for your wrist pin. That will connect it to the connecting rod, and the connecting rod would go right here. Wrist pin goes through, and then your retainers would go on either side. These are full floating wrist pins, so there's no, basically I don't have to use a press to get these wrist pins out of here. If it wasn't full floating, it would either be a friction fit in the piston or the connecting rod itself, but these ones should just slide right out. So this right here is one of the old pistons. As you can see, that Teflon's kind of come off, and you can see your rings inside here. Kind of looks like, oh, that one's free. What about this one? Yeah, that one's free too. Basically, when it's an old engine, these things can get bound up and you can start having issues. You can kind of see this zigzag one right here, and then the 2 on the other side. What I can do is I can get these out of here. I don't necessarily care about these ones. They're not going to be reused. They are a brittle material, so when you go to actually put them on the other one, you don't want to do a put it in and then like fit it into place like this. You'll actually warp this. I have a tool for that. I'll show you how to use it when it's time, but for now we'll get these things out of here. The ones I'm getting out right now are the top 2. These are your compression rings. These are what actually hold that explosion that happens when the gas ignites. And then these little ones right here, these are super thin. I mean, here's your oil scraper, if you will. I mean, you compare this to this, and the difference is just, it's pretty drastic. And let's see here. Got another one on the other side of that little zigzag ring. I don't know the exact name of it. And then this. Sometimes trying to find the split in this can be a little difficult because it'll just blend right in. Yeah, that's all your rings there. And this is the connecting rod that goes into it. Your wrist pin sits right in here. And there's a little clip that holds it in place. Let's see if I can get it out of here with this screwdriver. Looks like I'm gonna have to use a different one. I will be right back with a different screwdriver. Well, I grabbed a different screwdriver and pliers just in case. You never know what you're gonna need. And there's, as you can see, there's this tiny little groove right here. Try to get that closer for you. You see that? Basically what you do is you just go right in there and pop this little clip out. So you do that on the, you can do that on one side with these, and you should just be able to push this wrist pin right out of here. I went and grabbed a punch and a hammer. Let's see if we can't get this out of here. Not the best surface for this, but it's what I have. Right. All right. There it is. Got the wrist pin here. It's basically a hollow tube, if you will. Hardened steel. Connects your piston to the connecting rod. And that bearing doesn't look terrible. But basically with connecting rods, these from the factory, the way they make these, they actually make this entire thing and then they break this piece off. This is a break fit. And I will actually show you here. Basically with break fit pieces like this, this cap can only fit this connecting rod, and it can only go on one way. So, not sure if you can see the surface here, but you see how that's super rough? I mean, that's kind of diagonal, and so is this one. It's kind of got a jagged piece right there. Let's see. Come on, focus. There we go. Yeah, jagged piece right there. This is a break fit. And if this was to get separated, if this was the only one apart, there you can figure out actually which way this goes on. These little lines right here, these are called tangs. And this fits tang to tang. What these actually do is they're with the bearings that go in here, the rod bearings, main bearings have them too, is they have this little notch in them that will fit into one or the other of these tangs. And you put one here, and then this would go around the crank and you would tighten it up. And then that would be the assembly of this. So with the rod that had a spun bearing, I am going to grab a 542 valve piston. The connecting rod is exactly the same as a 3 valve. There is some difference with the piston, but that's because of the head design. I'm going to go through all of these real quick, knock the wrist pins out of them, and get them separated from the pistons. I'm not going to take off any of the rings because they're all going into scrap anyway, so that would just be extra work. So I'm going to do that real quick, and yeah, let's get right into it. So, as you probably saw throughout that video, I moved from the punch I was using to just a socket that would fit inside that area with the wrist pin, and that made it so much easier. And just stick it in there, hit it, boom, done. So, now look at me. I am so dirty. Well, I guess it comes with the job, right?